We need to realize that we are facing three different revolutions at the present time in the management of cancer in general, and breast cancer in particular. One is immunotherapy that has an impact, broad impact in oncology in general, and it's starting to have a larger impact in breast cancer. The second one is the CDK4/6 inhibitor revolution, where we are changing the treatment of patients with hormone receptor positive disease, okay, with survival benefits we had never seen before. And the third revolution is the antibody-drug conjugate. Antibody-drug conjugates are different drugs, complex drugs, where you put together an antibody that is directed to a specific antigen. You put a linker that actually links that antibody to a cytotoxic, to a chemotherapy, to a very toxic drug. And that conjunct of components actually has demonstrated to be much more effective than standard chemotherapy whenever it has been tested. So these drugs are actually revolutionizing the management of breast cancer in different arenas, particularly in HER2-positive disease, but also in hormone receptor-positive disease and triple-negative breast cancers. So I presume or I predict that these drugs are going to be more and more impactful in what we do in our everyday life in clinical practice, and will have a significant impact on outcomes for patients whenever that the drugs are indicated. Well, the other presentation I'm going to address, it's a very, very interesting scenario that actually represents a change in what we have been doing over the last 40 years. For the last 4 decades, we have been treating patients with hormone receptor positive disease as if we're all the same, giving them endocrine therapy. We have learned over the last couple decades, 15 years, that the pathways involved in endocrine signaling are much more complicated and complex. And the issue, as a consequence of that, is that when we start combining drugs with endocrine therapy, we get better results. And this is what happened with the introduction of CDK4/6 inhibitors. And these are not going to be the only drugs. There are going to be other drugs that will be playing into that field. The point is that after the introduction of CDK4/6 inhibitors, we have gotten revolutionary survival amounts of time for patients with hormone receptor positive metastatic disease, in excess of 5 years. That's absolutely fantastic, okay? But the question is, most of these patients actually progress at some point. And what we'll be addressing and represents again a consequence of our understanding or better understanding over the last 15 years of how complex hormone receptor positive disease is what do you do after progression? And the fact is that a number of different alternatives have been generated that actually call our attention to the fact that first, we need to identify different patient populations that before we treated as if we're all the same. It's obviously critically important to recognize that we need research, we need support for research. I think that it's extremely critical for us to realize that support for research is scarce. We can only do limited trials from all the things that we need to investigate. However, I think that with involvement, community involvement, government involvement, societal involvement, patient involvement, we should be able, industry involvement, we should be able to advance at faster rates than we have so far. Certainly, we are generating a number of different alternatives for treatment over the last 5 to 6 to 10 years that is absolutely impressive. But we need to do more. There are still questions we need to answer. And support for research, okay, that will be well-defined, well-designed, and directed specifically to the populations, okay, that actually need treatment. It's going to be critical for us to move forward. So I guess the final message on this issue is the fact that research is something we should all be involved with. We cannot do research without patients, and certainly involvement of patients in research is obviously critical. So I think that we should envision a situation where patients actually, when facing a situation on changing therapy or starting therapy, okay, should ask their doctors, is there a clinical trial? Is there something I can do in order to actually improve knowledge and participate, gain benefits from participation of your generating information? So I think that in that setting, okay, patients are obviously also very, very critical because their involvement with clinical research is absolutely mandatory in order for this to move forward. I think cancer is not going away. It's something that we're going to have to face together. Okay, it's a big challenge. So we're going to have to build a big group of people involved in order to challenge all the issues that we need to solve leading with cancer. Personally, I think that when you look at the results that we have today, they are better than what we had, but still there's a lot of room for improvement. I think that one of the most critical things that touches me and that I have been trying to get more and more involved is with the issue of access and the issue of not having equal availability of treatments all over the world. Most new drugs that are launched into the market are only available for less than 10% of the world's population. That's a very big discrepancy. And that explains why the outcomes are so different in different countries and different regions. So we need to fight against that. The second aspect is to actually stimulate more research. I think that we need to build that group of people, okay, concentrated in trying to answer the most important questions and having all the players actively involved, industry, patients, governments, physicians, societies, research groups. All these need to be sitting in a table and actually discussing what the best ways forwards will be. And that probably is context dependent. What could be a solution in Australia may not necessarily work for the US or for the UK or the rest of Europe, or certainly not for South America or Africa, okay? So I need to see that these groups of players meet and get together within their context with specialists that know their reality in order to be practical and find the solutions that actually will help people in each different region.